Hey, Bobby Darin fans. Cool, you found me. This latest installment of Darin to be Different. My name is Sam Tellerico, and I am the biological, albeit unacknowledged son of the late, great Bobby Darin. And if you'd like to know how that all came to be, feel free to pick up a copy of Who Did You Say Your Father Was? And the sequel, in which I find DNA confirmation. Who does he think his grandfather is? I really appreciate your support and your interest in this whole story, which has just been a trip for me. If you've never visited or seen this series before, my goal is to draw attention to some of the lesser known works of my bio dad, Bobby Darin. Specifically, I'm recording this on July 16th, 2023, but if this was July 16th, 1969, most of us would have been focused on the Apollo 11 moon mission. But if you were living or visiting Las Vegas, Nevada on July 16th, 1969, perhaps you had a ticket to the Bonanza, which was featuring not Bobby Darin, but Bob Darin. Yes, Bob Darin. Gone was the finger-snapping, bow tie, tuxedo, rock and roller, crooner, lounge singer, swinger. Instead, you're seeing a guy with no toupee, a mustache, denim jeans look, doing protest songs. Now, how did this transformation come about? Well, to find the answer to that, you'd have to go back about a year earlier to July 1968 and the formation of Bobby Darin's own record label that he started in order to give himself and other artists a chance to express their socially relevant views. He called it Direction Records. And little sidebar here, the Bobby Darin estate has recently announced the reformation of Direction Records. And they've begun this campaign by, for the first time, making available on streaming platforms 5 of Bobby Darin's Atlantic Records output. Atlantic Records was the label that Bobby recorded right before he formed Direction and changed directions, as it were. And Shane Brown, who in my mind is the ambassador for all things Bobby Darin musically related, wrote this fantastic book, even called it Bobby Darin Directions. That's kind of a little bit what Bobby Darin kind of looked like in July 1969. He has a great blog page, and he has some things to say about his opinions about the rollout of the new Direction Records. I highly recommend it. Shane makes the case that Bobby Darin is still relevant today, and more should be done to promote that. And the evidence of that was found by myself just last week. I'm in my local supermarket. I'm ready to check out, and I look at the magazine stand, and there's a cover of something called Closer Weekly Magazine. It's kind of like People, but for older and in some cases deceased celebrities. And there's Bobby Darin right on the cover. So I almost bought a copy, but I was able to thumb through it and read this whole fluff piece, and I was going to pay $6.99. But I did get a selfie. Anyway, but getting back to Direction Records, circa 1968, one of the impetuses for Bobby Darin starting this label is that he was starting to get more politically motivated. He was a big follower in late 1967 of Robert F. Kennedy, brother of JFK, and began actively campaigning for RFK. There was talk of him having political aspirations of his own. When his sister, Nina, heard about this, she called him over and said, "Listen, Bobby, I got something to tell you. I'm not your sister. I'm your mother. Polly, who you thought was your mother, is my mother. She, Polly, is your grandmother." Well, of course, this just blows Bobby Darin out of the water. He can't believe this. Oh, my God, my whole life has been a lie. Who's my father? Who's my father? And well, Nina doesn't tell him. And these double revelations are said to have devastated Bobby Darin. Dodd Darin, my biological half-brother, who in his wonderful book, and it is wonderful, Dream Lovers, co-written with Maxine Pietro, even highlights that. But apparently Dodd Darin back then felt it was essential that somebody knows their biological roots. Maybe now has had a change of heart and doesn't feel the same way. Hopefully that will change. But getting back to July 1968, Bobby's world is rocked because not only did Martin Luther King Jr.'s death affect him in April of 1968, as Dodd writes, but more significantly, Bobby Kennedy's assassination in June of 1968 just really throws him for a loop. Bobby's probably thinking, I'm assuming, I can do more in the musical world. I'm not really a politician. Let me start this record label, see if I can change some minds like Bob Dylan did. And puts out his first album on Direction Records called Born Walden Robert Casoto, which is Bobby Darin's real name. And the album really doesn't really do much. It gets critical acclaim, puts out one single that doesn't do so well on the charts, doesn't get a lot of radio airplay. And people are saying, well, what did you expect? You're a rock and roller. Rock and rollers can't put out folk music and have it be successful. Well, what happens in later of 1968? Guy named Dion DiMucci. You might know him from Runaround Sue, The Wanderer. Scores big with a single called Abraham, Martin, and John. And in it, he even talks about the Bobby Kennedy's passing. I'm sure you know the song. Anybody here seen my old friend Bobby? Can you tell me where he's gone? I should have warmed up a little bit. Anyway, Bobby Darin and Dion were friends. Their singles, Splish Splash and Dion and the Bellman's I Wonder Why, were out around the same time in 1958. They even went on tour together, and Dion writes in this wonderful memoir written with, what's his name? Devin Shea. They were on this road trip with Jimmy Clanton, Joanne Campbell, and Dion writes, Darin was only 3 years older than me, but he could have been my father for all the know-how and experience he had. He just scored with Splish Splash, but even then you could tell he had more on his wish list than just being a teen idol. When you travel hundreds of miles with a guy, eating bad food, sharing roach-infested hotel rooms, it goes without saying you get to know him. Bobby was one of the first real friends I had in the music business, someone who was on the same rung of the ladder as I was, but who took the time to give me the benefit of what he learned. He was a great person to be around, positive, fun, and extremely ambitious. And Dion writes more about Bobby. Dion's still with us. Dion's musical output after Abraham, Martin, and John, while nothing that he recorded really matched that career high. The single peaked at number 4 on the Billboard charts. Continued to put out high quality folk music for the next several years. Now he's an acclaimed blues musician, still rocking. Just love Dion. But we get back to early 1969. I think that the success of Abraham, Martin, and John by Dion propelled Bobby Darin to, I can do this. And he puts out another album. And this time he's even committing himself further by calling the album Commitment and calling himself Bob Darin. He starts performing at summer fairs in spring and summer of 1969. And around that time, he releases the first single from Commitment called Me and Mr. Horner that he writes. Musically, the song starts a little bit like his big hit from 1966, If I Were a Carpenter. But the minute he starts singing, it's a whole different vibe. It's almost kind of like a rap thing. Me and Mr. Horner standing on the corner, not doing nothing to no one. And it's something just so totally different. The single does even worse than the single from the first album on Direction, Long Line Rider. It doesn't even make the Billboard Hot 100, it kind of what they call bubbles under. However, radio station KFXM in San Bernardino, California, has that shooting all the way up to number 2 on their charts, which, fun fact, was a better showing than Dion's Abraham, Martin, and John was. So take that, Dion. Bobby beat you there. So Me and Mr. Horner gets released. The lyrics is, I think, what really, really makes the song. It's reminiscent of Arlo Guthrie's Alice's Restaurant Massacre, all about police harassing young people based on their looks. Things like that. Of course, you know that one. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant. I'm in the mood to sing today. I don't know what's going on, but musically, stylistically, the song is very reminiscent of Bob Dylan's, not Darin's, Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues from 1965. In fact, if you played Subterranean Homesick Blues, the 45 on 33, you get the tempo of Bobby Darin's Me and Mr. Honer. The lyrics, like I said, similar to Arlo Guthrie's Alice's Restaurant Massacre, talk about how the appearance of someone can possibly lead to harassment from the man, from the cops, from the fuzz. Somebody who has long hair, guys, or facial hair can be thought of as being anti-war. Of course, Vietnam was going on in 1969. Pot smoking, drug dealing homosexuals. And in fact, in Philadelphia, the song, the lyrics talk about some cities: Denver, Colorado; Yuma, Arizona; Kona, Hawaii, and significantly, there's 3, maybe even 4 mentions of South Philly. The mayor of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the time, in 1969, was a man named Frank Rizzo, who was notorious for getting his police force to do exactly that, go round up the streets from all these awful influences, people. So that's where Bobby Darin was coming from, wanting to be social relevant and topical, and not doing it just for a fad, because he really, I believe, really believed in the message that he was putting out there and was hoping that people would respond to that. So there you go. I hope you enjoy listening to Me and Mr. Honer by Bobby Darin. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like and hear when new installments are coming. Leave your comments here. I really do appreciate them. And let's keep the musical legacy of Bobby Darin alive. Thanks a lot for viewing.
Me and Mr. Honer standing on the corner, not doing nothing to no one. When a squad car stops and out jumps cops, you're one of them if I ever saw one. Wonder what I said as my face turned red. Up against the wall, says the tall one. That's a cute mustache, have you got any hash? I'd like to make a buy, says the small one. Not a whole thing silly, but I'm staring at the billy, quietly asking myself, now Willie, use that thing to make my eardrums ring. It's all a bad dream and I'm in South Philly now. Tell him, Mr. Honer. Me and Mr. Honer in Yuma, Arizona, trying to hitch a ride to Denver. Well, out of a toll comes the highway patrol to check up on my gender. Is it her or him, or maybe Tiny Tim? Now up against the fence says the dense one. You have picked a bad spot to smoke your pot. What you gonna do, 2 against 1? Not a whole thing silly, but I'm staring at the billy, quietly asking myself, now Willie, use that thing to make my eardrums ring. It's all a bad dream and I'm in South Philly now. Tell him, Mr. Honer. Mr. Honer, relaxing out a corner, the Hawaiian sun can be groovy. When a pair of MPs yell out freeze, and I think I got a part in a movie. Hey, I'm talking to you, tell me what did I do? You're a draft card burner, says the thin one. We can tell by your looks that you read too many books and wars, and that's because you ain't been in one. Not a whole thing silly, but I'm staring at the billy, quietly asking myself, now Willie, use that thing to make my eardrums ring. It's all a bad dream and I'm in South Philly now. now. Tell him, Mr. Horner.